Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, squinting at the massive holographic display floating above the crowded marketplace on Station Kepler 442. The auction house buzzed with creatures from dozens of different worlds. Tall, blue-skinned Zentari clicked their mandibles in animated conversation. Short, round bloblings wobbled between stalls, their translucent bodies glowing with excitement. Even a few of the mysterious Veilkin had shown up, their shadowy forms barely visible in the dim corners. The human mechanic had only come here to buy spare parts for his ship repair business. Credits were tight as always, but he needed a new plasma condenser if he wanted to keep his little workshop running. Marcus had learned long ago that the alien-run markets offered better prices than the sterile corporate stations that catered to humans. "Next item up for auction," announced the four-armed Kellen auctioneer, its voice booming through the translation speakers. A rare albino specimen from the wolf species of Terra. Purchased from licensed Terra exporters. Fully documented. Marcus looked up from his shopping list, confused. Earth wolves weren't supposed to be sold off-world. The protection laws were strict about that. But there, in a small containment field on the auction platform, sat a tiny white wolf pup. Its fur was pure snow white and its eyes were the palest blue Marcus had ever seen. The little creature couldn't have been more than 8 weeks old. The pup trembled in the energy cage, pressing itself against the far corner. Its small body shook with each unfamiliar sound and smell from the crowd of alien bidders. Marcus felt something twist in his stomach as he watched several wealthy-looking aliens examine the creature like it was just another commodity. "This specimen will make an excellent conversation piece," the auctioneer continued. "Extremely rare coloration, guaranteed authentic Earth genetics. Starting bid is 5,000 credits. A Zentari immediately raised a crystalline bidding device. 5,000, its translated voice announced coldly. 7,000, countered a Veilkin, stepping partially into the light. Marcus found himself moving closer to the platform, pushing through the crowd. The wolf pup's ears were pinned back against its head, and he could see it was trying to make itself as small as possible. Something about the little creature's obvious terror made his chest tight. 10,000, called out a wealthy-looking blobling, its body flashing bright green with satisfaction. The price kept climbing. 15,000, 20,000, 25,000. Marcus watched in growing alarm as creatures bid on the wolf pup like it was artwork or jewelry. None of them seemed to see it as a living being. To them, it was just a rare trinket from the famous human homeworld. When the bidding reached 30,000 credits, Marcus realized he was clenching his fists. That amount of money could keep his repair shop running for 2 years. It could buy him new equipment, better tools, maybe even let him expand his business. But looking at the terrified wolf pup, all he could think about was how wrong this felt. 35,000, announced a Zentari merchant, clicking its mandibles with obvious pleasure. The wolf pup had given up trying to hide, and now sat in the middle of the containment field, looking utterly defeated. Its tiny head hung low, and Marcus could see its small body still trembling. The sight reminded him of something from his childhood on Earth, when he'd found a stray dog caught in a thunderstorm. That same look of helpless fear. Going once at 35,000 credits, the auctioneer called out. Marcus checked his account balance on his worn datapad. He had barely 4,000 credits to his name. Most of his money was tied up in parts and equipment for the shop. He couldn't afford to bid on anything worth more than a few hundred credits, let alone 35,000. Going twice. The Zentari merchant was already calculating its profit margins, discussing with its companions how much humans would pay to see a genuine albino earth wolf in their private collections. Marcus felt sick listening to their casual conversation about the pup's future. Without really thinking about it, Marcus raised his hand. 40,000 credits, he heard himself say. The entire auction house fell silent. Every alien head, tentacle, and optical sensor turned to stare at the scruffy human mechanic in oil-stained coveralls. The auctioneer's forearms paused mid-gesture, clearly not having expected this development. "Sir," the auctioneer said carefully, "did you say 40,000 credits?" Marcus swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. "That's right, 40,000. A ripple of confused chittering, clicking, and bubbling sounds swept through the crowd. The Zentari merchant that had been leading the bidding stared at Marcus with undisguised shock. Several other aliens began rapid conversations in their native languages, their translators struggling to keep up. I need to verify your account balance before accepting the bid, the auctioneer announced. Clearly skeptical, Marcus's hands shook slightly as he transmitted his financial information. Of course, his account only showed 4,000 credits. He had no idea how he was going to pay for this, but looking at the wolf pup's frightened face, he knew he couldn't back down now. The auctioneer's expression shifted to one of bureaucratic annoyance. Sir, your account shows insufficient funds. I'm afraid your bid cannot be accepted. Wait, Marcus said quickly, his mind racing. I own a ship repair business. The shop, equipment, everything. It's worth at least 50,000 credits. I can put it up as collateral. More confused alien chatter filled the air. The concept of risking everything for a creature that wasn't even the same species seemed to baffle the gathered bidders. Marcus heard translated fragments of their conversations drifting through the crowd. Why would a human bankrupt itself for an animal? Perhaps it's planning to eat it? Do humans consume their own planet's predators? The auctioneer consulted with several official-looking aliens before nodding slowly. Very well. If you're willing to put your business as collateral, we can proceed. But understand, human, if you default on payment, you will lose everything. Marcus looked up at the wolf pup one more time. The little creature had lifted its head and seemed to be looking directly at him with those pale blue eyes. For just a moment, Marcus could have sworn he saw something like hope in that gaze. I understand, he said firmly. 40,000 credits. The silence stretched uncomfortably as the auctioneer waited for any counterbids. Marcus stood frozen, hardly believing what he'd just done. Around him, the alien crowd whispered and clicked among themselves, clearly puzzled by his behavior. The Zentari merchant who'd been bidding against him stepped closer, its large black eyes studying Marcus with obvious confusion. Human, the Zentari said through its translator. I do not understand your logic. This creature cannot provide labor. It cannot generate profit. Why do you risk financial ruin for it? Marcus looked up at the wolf pup again. The little animal had moved closer to the front of its containment field and was watching him intently. Something about its posture had changed. The absolute terror was still there, but underneath it, Marcus sensed a cautious curiosity. I don't expect you to understand, Marcus replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. Hell, I'm not sure I understand it myself. Sold, the auctioneer announced when no other bids came forward. 40,000 credits to the human. Please proceed to the payment station to complete your transaction. As Marcus made his way through the crowd, alien voices followed him in a dozen different languages. He caught fragments through the translators that made him realize just how bizarre his behavior seemed to the other species. A blobling pulsed bright orange as it spoke to its companion. I have studied human behavior for 3 cycles, but this makes no sense. They show irrational attachment to creatures that serve no purpose. A group of Veilkin whispered among themselves in their shadowy corner. Perhaps the white coloration has religious significance in their culture? Some species worship albino variants. 2 Kellen merchants clicked their mandibles rapidly. 40,000 credits could buy a small cargo ship. This human's decision-making process is clearly defective. At the payment station, a bored-looking Zentari clerk processed Marcus's business documents with mechanical efficiency. The alien's 4 hands moved across holographic interfaces, transferring ownership of Marcus's repair shop to the auction house as collateral. Your payment plan is unusual, the clerk noted, glancing at Marcus with those large black eyes. Typically, wealthy collectors pay immediately. You understand that failure to meet payments will result in immediate foreclosure. I understand, Marcus said, signing digital documents that sealed his fate. With each signature, he felt the weight of what he'd done settling on his shoulders. If he couldn't make the payments, he'd lose everything he'd worked for over the past 15 years. Your creature will be ready for pickup in Bay 7, the clerk informed him, handing over a data chip with care instructions. Standard warning, this is a predator species from Terra. Handle with appropriate caution. Marcus made his way to Bay 7, passing more confused aliens along the way. Word of his purchase had already spread through the station's gossip networks. Several species he'd never seen before had gathered to watch the human who'd bankrupted himself for an animal. The pickup bay was sterile and cold, all white surfaces and humming machinery. A Kellen attendant waited beside a larger containment unit that housed the wolf pup. The 4-armed alien looked distinctly uncomfortable as it prepared to transfer custody. Human Marcus Chen, the attendant read from its datapad. I must inform you that this creature is classified as a dangerous predator. It has not been domesticated or trained. The auction house accepts no responsibility for injuries or property damage. I'll take full responsibility, Marcus said, approaching the containment unit. The wolf pup was huddled in the back corner again, but its ears perked up when it saw Marcus. Those pale blue eyes locked onto his face, and Marcus felt that strange connection again. The little creature was small enough to fit in his hands, but he could see the wild intelligence behind its gaze. Marcus started to ask about releasing the containment field, but the Kellen attendant was already backing away. Simply deactivate the field using this remote, the alien said quickly, setting the device on a nearby table. I strongly recommend keeping the creature sedated during transport. Most species find predator behavior disturbing. Marcus picked up the remote but didn't immediately use it. Instead, he crouched down to the pup's eye level and spoke softly. Hey there, little one. I know you're scared. I'm scared too, honestly, but I'm not going to hurt you. The wolf pup tilted its head slightly, those pale eyes never leaving Marcus's face. Its small body had stopped trembling, though it remained pressed against the back wall of the containment unit. My name's Marcus, he continued, keeping his voice gentle. I run a repair shop on this station. Well, I used to run it. I guess now I'm in the wolf-raising business. He pressed the deactivation button and the energy field shimmered and disappeared. The wolf pup tensed, ready to bolt, but Marcus didn't move. He just stayed crouched there, letting the animal decide what to do next. Behind him, the Kellen attendant made worried clicking sounds. Human, you should establish dominance immediately. Predators respond only to strength and fear. That's not how it works, Marcus said without taking his eyes off the pup. At least not with wolves. They're pack animals. They respond to trust and respect. The attendant's clicking grew more agitated. I do not understand these concepts in relation to predator management. Slowly, carefully, the wolf pup took a step forward. Then another. Its nose twitched as it caught Marcus's scent, and its ears remained forward in a posture that seemed more curious than fearful. Marcus extended his hand, palm up, moving slowly. The pup sniffed cautiously, then surprised him by taking another step closer. When it was just inches away, the little wolf looked up at Marcus's face again, and he could swear he saw something like recognition there. That's it, Marcus whispered. I'm not going to hurt you. I know this is all scary and confusing, but I'm going to take care of you. The wolf pup made a small sound, not quite a whine, but something softer. Then, to Marcus's amazement, it stepped close enough to sniff his fingers properly. The Kellen attendant's clicking had stopped entirely. Marcus glanced over and saw the four-armed alien staring at them with obvious shock. Through the bay's windows, he could see other aliens gathering to watch, their various forms pressed against the transparent barriers. Impossible, the attendant breathed. Predators do not exhibit bonding behavior with unknown species. Our behavioral experts assured us. Your experts don't understand wolves, Marcus said, gently stroking the pup's head with one finger. The little creature leaned into the touch, and Marcus felt his heart melt completely. They're not just predators. They're family animals. They form deep bonds with their pack. But you are not its pack, the attendant protested. You are a completely different species. The behavioral patterns make no sense. Marcus carefully scooped up the wolf pup, and to his relief, it didn't struggle. Instead, it settled against his chest, those pale blue eyes still watching his face trustingly. Maybe that's what makes humans different, Marcus said, standing up with the pup cradled against him. We don't care about species barriers when it comes to family. As he walked toward the exit carrying his new companion, Marcus could hear excited alien chatter erupting behind him. Some sounded confused, others amazed, and a few seemed almost frightened by what they'd witnessed. The wolf pup made another small sound and pressed closer to Marcus's warmth. Whatever happened next, whatever financial ruin awaited him, Marcus knew he'd made the right choice. Looking down at the tiny white creature in his arms, he realized he wasn't just taking care of a wolf anymore. He was already thinking of her as family. Marcus's small apartment above his repair shop had never been designed for a wolf, but he was determined to make it work. He'd spent the last of his emergency credits on supplies recommended by the Terran Animal Care Database. Proper food, bedding, toys, and medical supplies. The wolf pup, who he'd decided to call Luna because of her pale coloration, had spent the first night huddled under his bed, too scared to come out. Now, 3 days later, She was following him everywhere. "Come on, Luna," Marcus said, setting down a bowl of specially formulated puppy food. "You need to eat more than those little nibbles." Luna approached the bowl cautiously, her pale blue eyes never leaving Marcus's face. She'd gained some confidence since that first terrifying day at the auction, but she was still wary of everything except Marcus himself. The constant hum of the station's machinery, the vibrations from passing ships, the occasional alien voices in the corridors all made her ears flatten against her head. Marcus sat on the floor nearby, working on a small engine component while Luna ate. He'd discovered that she was more comfortable eating when he was close by, as if his presence made her feel safe. The behavior fascinated him. He'd read about wolf pack dynamics, but experiencing it firsthand was different. A sharp knock at his door made Luna bolt back under the bed immediately. Marcus sighed, setting down his tools. Visitors had become a daily occurrence since word of his irrational purchase had spread throughout the station. "Marcus Chen?" The voice belonged to a Zentari speaking standard Galactic rather than using a translator. "I am Dr. Vextai, xenobiologist. I request permission to study your creature." Marcus opened the door to find a tall, blue-skinned Zentari wearing official research credentials. Behind Dr. Vextai stood two other aliens, a blobling with recording equipment built into its translucent body, and a Kellen with multiple data collection devices attached to its forearms. "She's not a creature," Marcus said firmly. "Her name is Luna, and she's not available for study." Dr. Vextai's large black eyes blinked slowly. "I do not understand your emotional attachment terminology. The specimen you purchased is scientifically significant. No known species has successfully formed interspecies pack bonds with Terran wolves. Our research could benefit all galactic species." "Luna isn't a specimen either," Marcus replied, not moving from the doorway. "She's family." The blobling pulsed bright yellow with confusion. "Family units are genetically related. This creature shares no DNA with humans. Your statement is factually incorrect." "Maybe in your species," Marcus said, "but humans define family differently." From inside the apartment came a small whimpering sound. Luna had heard the alien voices and was obviously distressed. Marcus immediately turned away from his visitors, closing the door partway. "Luna, it's okay," he called softly. "They're not coming in." After a moment, a small white nose peeked out from under the bed. Luna's ears were still flattened, but she crept forward when she saw Marcus. To his surprise, she positioned herself between him and the door, her tiny body tense and alert despite her fear. Dr. Vextai pressed closer to the door opening, studying Luna's behavior with obvious excitement. "Remarkable. The creature is exhibiting protective instincts toward you. This contradicts everything we know about cross-species behavioral patterns." "She's protecting me because she trusts me," Marcus explained, reaching down to gently stroke Luna's head. "Because I've shown her that I'll protect her too." "But protection requires reciprocal benefit," the Kellen researcher clicked rapidly. "What evolutionary advantage does this creature provide you? What service does it perform?" Marcus looked down at Luna, who had relaxed at his touch but was still watching the aliens warily. How could he explain the feeling he got when Luna curled up next to him while he worked, or the way his stress levels dropped just from seeing her contentment when she played with her toys, or how her presence made his small apartment feel like a real home for the first time in years? "She makes me happy," Marcus said simply. The three aliens exchanged looks of complete bewilderment. The blobling's body cycled through several confused colors before settling on a frustrated orange. "Happiness is a temporary neurochemical state," Dr. Vextai said slowly. "You cannot sustain a 40,000 credit investment for temporary neurochemical stimulation. This behavior pattern suggests psychological dysfunction." "Maybe from your perspective," Marcus replied, "but humans have been forming bonds with other species for thousands of years. It's not dysfunction. It's who we are." As if to emphasize his point, Luna made a small sound and pressed against his leg. Marcus crouched down and she immediately climbed onto his lap, settling there with obvious contentment. Her presence had a calming effect on Marcus that he couldn't fully explain to himself, let alone to alien scientists. "We could offer you 50,000 credits for the creature," Dr. Vextai said suddenly. "Enough to pay your debt and restore your business." Marcus's hand stilled on Luna's fur. 50,000 credits would solve all his problems. He could get his shop back, pay off his debts, and return to his normal life. For a moment, he let himself imagine the relief of financial security. Luna looked up at him with those pale blue eyes, completely trusting. She had no idea what the aliens were offering, or what it might mean for her. She only knew that Marcus made her feel safe in a frightening universe full of strange sounds and smells. "No," Marcus said firmly. "She's not for sale." Dr. Vexitai's mandibles clicked with frustration. "You are refusing economic recovery for an animal that provides no measurable benefit. This confirms our hypothesis about human psychological instability. Think what you want," Marcus said, standing up with Luna in his arms, "but the answer is no." After the aliens left, Marcus sat on his small couch with Luna curled up beside him. He pulled up his financial statements on his datapad, reviewing the payment schedule he'd agreed to. The numbers were daunting. Even working double shifts at the temporary repair jobs he'd managed to find, he was barely covering his basic living expenses. The first payment on his debt was due in 2 weeks, and he was nowhere close to having the money. Luna seemed to sense his distress. She crawled closer, pressing her small, warm body against his side. Marcus scratched behind her ears, and she made a small, contented sound that somehow made the financial pressure feel less overwhelming. "What do you think, Luna?" he asked softly. "Am I crazy for turning down that money?" Luna looked up at him with an expression that seemed almost understanding. Then she did something that made Marcus's heart melt completely. She licked his hand with her small pink tongue. "Yeah," Marcus said, smiling despite his worries. "I think I'm crazy too, but the good kind of crazy." Over the following days, Marcus developed a routine with Luna that worked around his irregular job schedule. She would wait patiently in a small carrier while he worked on various ships around the station, and she'd greet him with obvious joy when he returned. She was learning to trust other humans gradually, though she remained wary of most alien species. The most remarkable change was in Marcus himself. Despite his financial stress, he found himself sleeping better and feeling more energetic. Luna's presence gave him a sense of purpose beyond just survival. She depended on him completely, and that responsibility somehow made him feel stronger and more focused. News of their bond continued to spread throughout the station. Some aliens remained baffled by Marcus's behavior, but others began showing genuine curiosity about human-animal relationships. A few even asked if they could observe Luna from a distance, intrigued by the concept of cross-species emotional attachment. Marcus always said yes to respectful observers, using these opportunities to educate aliens about human nature. He found himself becoming an unofficial ambassador for human values, explaining concepts like loyalty, unconditional love, and emotional support through his relationship with Luna. But as the due date for his first payment approached, Marcus couldn't ignore the harsh reality of his situation. Love and loyalty wouldn't pay his debts, and losing Luna after everything they'd been through would be devastating for both of them. Word about Marcus and Luna had spread far beyond the station. Within 2 weeks, xenobiologists, cultural anthropologists, and even philosophers from across the galaxy were arriving to observe what they called the human bonding phenomenon. Marcus found himself at the center of something he'd never intended. While Luna had grown more confident and curious about the steady stream of observers, Dr. Calethia, a Velkin researcher specializing in interspecies psychology, had been observing them for 3 days. Unlike the other scientists, she seemed genuinely interested in understanding rather than just documenting their behavior. "The emotional synchronization is remarkable," Dr. Calethia said, her shadowy form barely visible in Marcus's workshop. "When you experience stress, the wolf's cortisol levels increase correspondingly. When she feels contentment, your neural patterns show measurable relaxation responses." Marcus paused in his work on a damaged navigation array, looking down at Luna, who was chewing contentedly on a synthetic bone nearby. "It doesn't feel like synchronization. It just feels natural. That is precisely what makes it extraordinary," Dr. Calethia replied. "Most species require extensive conditioning to develop even basic cooperation with other species. You and Luna achieved emotional resonance within hours of first contact." Luna had indeed grown remarkably in the past 2 weeks. She was now twice the size she'd been at the auction, her legs longer and her features more defined. Her pure white coat was thick and healthy, and those pale blue eyes held an intelligence that sometimes startled Marcus with its depth. "She's not just responding to me," Marcus observed, watching Luna play. "She's thinking, making decisions. Yesterday she figured out how to open the tool cabinet, not because she was trained to, but because she wanted to investigate the sounds coming from inside. A new voice joined the conversation. That level of problem-solving intelligence suggests the creature could be trained for complex tasks. Marcus turned to see Commander Thaxalon, a high-ranking Zentari military officer, standing in his workshop doorway. Behind the commander were two uniformed subordinates, their weapons clearly visible. Luna isn't a creature, Marcus said automatically, the correction becoming routine, and she's not for sale or recruitment. Commander Thaxalon stepped into the workshop without invitation, his black eyes scanning everything with military precision. Luna immediately moved closer to Marcus, her ears alert and her body tense. The Zentari Defense Council has been following your situation with interest, the commander said. A domesticated Terran wolf could provide significant advantages in military operations, enhanced senses, pack loyalty, natural stealth capabilities. Luna isn't domesticated, Marcus replied firmly. She's a family member, and she's definitely not becoming a military asset. Your financial records indicate otherwise, Commander Thaxalon said coldly. Your first payment is due in 4 days. 15,000 credits. Our sources suggest you have less than 2,000 in available funds. Marcus felt his stomach clench. The commander was right. Despite working every available job, taking on dangerous repairs that other mechanics wouldn't touch, he was nowhere close to making his payment. He'd been hoping for a miracle, but miracles were in short supply on space stations. Luna seemed to sense the tension in the room. She moved to stand directly between Marcus and the military officers, her small body rigid with alertness. A low growl rumbled in her throat, barely audible but unmistakably protective. Commander Thaxalon's mandibles clicked with interest. Observe. The creature instinctively recognizes threat patterns and positions itself defensively. With proper training, such instincts could be highly valuable. She's protecting her family, Dr. Calethia said quietly from her shadowy corner. This is not military behavior. This is emotional attachment expressing itself through protective instincts. Irrelevant, the commander replied. The Zentari Defense Council is prepared to offer 75,000 credits for the creature. This would clear your debt with surplus remaining for business restoration. Marcus looked down at Luna, who was still maintaining her protective stance. Her pale blue eyes were fixed on the soldiers, but every few seconds she glanced back at Marcus as if checking that he was still safe behind her. 75,000 credits. More money than Marcus had ever seen at one time. Enough to solve every problem, restore his business, and secure his future. All he had to do was hand over Luna to become a military asset, probably never to see her again. What would happen to her? Marcus asked quietly. Standard military animal training protocols, Commander Thaxalon replied. Conditioning for obedience, tactical instruction, deployment readiness. The creature would serve with honor in the Zentari Defense Forces. That's not what I asked, Marcus said, his voice hardening. What would happen to Luna? Would she be happy? Would she have companionship? Would anyone care about her as an individual? Or would she just be another piece of equipment? The commander's expression showed complete confusion. Equipment maintenance ensures optimal performance. The creature's comfort would be maintained at regulation standards. Marcus crouched down and gently touched Luna's head. She relaxed slightly at his touch but kept watching the soldiers. Her trust in him was absolute, and the weight of that responsibility felt heavier than any debt. No, Marcus said, standing up again. The answer is no. Commander Thaxalon's mandibles clicked sharply. You refuse financial salvation for sentimental attachment to an animal. This confirms reports of human psychological instability. Maybe we are unstable, Marcus replied. But that instability is what makes us human. Luna isn't property to be sold. She's family. After the military delegation left, Dr. Calethia remained in the workshop. Her shadowy form seemed to shimmer with what Marcus had learned to recognize as deep thought among her species. I begin to understand, she said slowly. The bond you describe as family is not based on genetic relationship or mutual benefit. It is something else entirely. It's love, Marcus said simply, scratching Luna behind the ears. Unconditional love. Love, Dr. Calethia repeated as if testing the word. Our species has no direct translation for this concept. We understand affection, partnership, reproductive bonding, but this unconditional attachment, regardless of benefit, it's what makes life worth living, Marcus said, watching Luna settle back down with her toy. At least for humans it is. Dr. Calethea was quiet for a long moment. I have observed 17 different species over 3 decades of research. I have never seen anything like what exists between you and Luna. It defies evolutionary logic, economic reasoning, and survival instincts. Yeah, Marcus agreed, but it makes us both happier and stronger. Sometimes the illogical choice is the right choice. That evening, as Marcus reviewed his impossible financial situation once again, Luna curled up beside him on the couch. She'd grown enough that she now took up a significant portion of the small space, but Marcus didn't mind. Her warm presence and steady breathing had become essential to his daily peace of mind. 3 days, Luna, he said softly, stroking her thick white fur. 3 days until I have to come up with 15,000 credits or lose everything. Luna looked up at him with those intelligent pale blue eyes, then did something that never failed to amaze the alien observers. She seemed to deliberately nuzzle his hand in a gesture of comfort. Marcus smiled despite his worries. Whatever happened in 3 days, whatever financial ruin awaited him, he knew he'd made the right choice. Luna was family, and family was worth any sacrifice, even if the rest of the galaxy thought he was crazy for believing it. The payment deadline was tomorrow, and Marcus had managed to scrape together exactly 3,847 credits. It wasn't even close to the 15,000 he needed. He sat in his workshop, staring at the notice from the auction house that had arrived that morning. In precise legal language, it informed him that failure to make payment would result in immediate foreclosure of his collateral and repossession of his purchased biological asset. Luna seemed to sense his distress. She'd been staying closer to him all day, occasionally nuzzling his hand or resting her head on his leg. At 3 months old, she was already showing the intelligence and loyalty that made wolves such remarkable creatures. Her white coat had grown thick and lustrous, and her pale blue eyes held a depth of understanding that sometimes took Marcus's breath away. I'm sorry, girl, Marcus said softly, scratching behind her ears. I tried everything I could think of. Maybe Commander Thaxalon was right. Maybe you'd be better off with someone who can actually take care of you. Luna made a small sound of protest and pressed closer to his side. The gesture was so clearly affectionate that Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. A sudden commotion in the corridor outside interrupted his melancholy thoughts. Shouting voices, running footsteps, and the distinctive hum of emergency systems activating. Marcus opened his door to find chaos erupting throughout the station. What's happening? He called to a passing blobbling maintenance worker. Hull breach in Section C, the alien replied, its body flashing urgent red. Micrometeorite swarm. Search and rescue teams are overwhelmed. 3 missing in the debris field. Marcus felt Luna press against his leg, her ears alert and her nose twitching as she processed the unfamiliar scents and sounds of the emergency. Suddenly, she made a sharp barking sound and tugged at his pants leg, pulling him toward the corridor. Luna, what is it? Marcus asked, but she was already moving, her nose to the floor as if following a scent trail. Dr. Calethea materialized from the shadows nearby, her voice urgent. Marcus, the emergency teams cannot locate the missing individuals. The debris is interfering with standard scanning equipment. Luna barked again, more insistently, and began moving down the corridor with purpose. Her nose remained close to the floor, and her entire body language had changed. She wasn't the playful puppy Marcus knew. She was focused, alert, working. She's tracking something, Marcus realized. Wolves have incredible senses. Maybe she can find what the scanners can't. Without hesitation, Marcus grabbed an emergency kit and followed Luna through the station's winding corridors. Dr. Calethea ghosted along behind them, and soon they were joined by other aliens who had heard about the search effort. Luna led them to an emergency access hatch that opened onto one of the damaged sections. The area beyond was twisted metal and floating debris, with atmosphere held in place only by emergency force fields. 3 station residents were trapped somewhere in that maze of wreckage. Human, this is extremely dangerous, warned Security Chief Mexan, a 4-armed Kellen who had arrived with the official rescue team. The structural integrity is compromised. One wrong move could cause complete decompression. Luna found something, Marcus insisted, watching his companion sniff at the air currents coming through the hatch. Look at her behavior. She's definitely tracking a scent. Luna whined softly and looked back at Marcus, then at the dangerous area beyond the hatch. Her meaning was clear. She knew where the missing people were, but she needed him to follow. The creature cannot possibly have the training for rescue operations. Security Chief Mexon protested. This is highly irregular. Her name is Luna, Marcus said automatically, suiting up in emergency gear. And she doesn't need training. This is what wolves do naturally. Dr. Calethea stepped forward, her shadowy form shimmering with excitement. Chief Mexon, I have been studying this pair for weeks. The wolf's sensory capabilities far exceed our technological sensors in these conditions. The human-wolf bond may be our best chance of locating the missing individuals. Marcus clipped a safety line to his belt and looked down at Luna. Are you sure about this, girl? It's dangerous in there. Luna's response was to step confidently toward the hatch, her pale blue eyes fixed on Marcus with absolute trust. She knew he would follow her anywhere, just as she would follow him. The damaged section was a nightmare of twisted metal and floating debris. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows through the wreckage, and the constant creaking of stressed materials made every step treacherous. Luna moved with surprising confidence, her nose constantly working as she navigated the maze. Behind them, the rescue team followed with growing amazement. Luna was leading them through the safest routes, avoiding unstable sections that their instruments hadn't even identified as dangerous yet. Remarkable, breathed Dr. Vextai, who had joined the rescue effort. The creature is processing multiple sensory inputs simultaneously. Air currents, structural vibrations, chemical signatures. No single scanner we possess has this level of integrated analysis capability. Luna suddenly stopped and barked twice, sharp and urgent. She was standing next to what appeared to be a solid wall of twisted metal. But when Marcus examined it more closely, he could see a small gap beneath the wreckage. Someone's in there, called a weak voice from the other side. Please help us. The rescue team immediately went to work using cutting tools to safely expand the opening Luna had found. Within minutes, they had extracted 2 injured Zentari workers who had been trapped for hours. The beings were dehydrated and suffering from minor injuries, but alive. How did she know? One of the rescued Zentari asked, staring at Luna with awe. Our emergency beacons were damaged. We couldn't signal for help. She smelled you, Marcus explained, giving Luna an affectionate pat. Wolves can track scents across incredible distances, even in conditions like this. Luna wasn't finished. She was already moving again, her nose working as she searched for the third missing person. The trail led deeper into the damaged section, to an area so unstable that the rescue team hesitated to follow. The structural integrity readings are critical, Security Chief Mexon reported. One wrong step could trigger a cascading failure. Luna looked back at Marcus, her pale eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. She knew where the last person was, but the way forward was too dangerous for a full rescue team. I'll go alone, Marcus decided. Luna and I are smaller. We can move more carefully. Human, this is inadvisable, Chief Mexon protested. If the structure collapses, we will lose both you and the trapped individual. If we don't try, we lose the trapped person anyway, Marcus replied, checking his emergency gear. Luna knows what she's doing. I trust her. The final stretch was the most dangerous yet. Marcus and Luna moved in careful coordination, with Luna indicating safe paths through her body language and Marcus testing each step before committing his weight. The constant groaning of metal around them suggested that the entire section could collapse at any moment. Luna finally stopped beside a pile of debris and began pawing at a specific spot. Marcus could hear faint sounds from beneath, and together they carefully moved smaller pieces of wreckage until they revealed another trapped station resident. A young blobling who had been completely buried. The rescue took precious minutes that they didn't have. The structure was failing around them as Marcus carefully extracted the injured blobling, while Luna kept watch, her ears alert for any sound that might indicate imminent collapse. They made it back to safety just as the damaged section finally gave way, collapsing into twisted ruin that would have made rescue impossible. As the medical teams treated the rescued individuals, word of Luna's heroic performance spread rapidly throughout the station. Aliens who had previously dismissed Marcus's attachment to an irrational creature now spoke of her with respect and wonder. Commander Thaxilon approached Marcus in the aftermath, his expression unreadable. The creature's performance was exceptional. My previous offer stands. 75,000 credits. Marcus looked down at Luna, who was resting beside him after their ordeal. She was tired but alert, occasionally receiving grateful approaches from aliens who wanted to thank her for saving lives. Her name is Luna, Marcus said, for what felt like the 1,000th time, and she's still not for sale. But even as he said it, Marcus knew that tomorrow's deadline hadn't changed. Despite Luna's heroics, despite proving her worth to the entire station, he still couldn't make his payment. Unless something changed in the next 18 hours, he was going to lose everything anyway. Marcus woke on payment day to find an unusual gathering outside his workshop. Dozens of aliens from various species had assembled in the corridor, their voices creating a mixture of clicks, chirps, and translated speech that sounded almost like a celebration. Luna was already awake, sitting by the window and watching the crowd with curious ears perked forward. "What do you think that's about, girl?" Marcus asked, checking his chronometer. He had exactly 8 hours before the auction house would demand payment or foreclose on everything he owned. A knock at his door provided the answer. Marcus opened it to find Dr. Calethia, Dr. Vextai, and several other researchers he'd come to know over the past weeks. Behind them stood Security Chief Mexan, the 2 Zentari workers Luna had helped rescue, and the young blobling whose life she had saved. "Marcus Chen," Dr. Calethia said formally. "We request audience to discuss a matter of mutual benefit." Marcus stepped aside to let them enter, and Luna immediately moved to greet several of the aliens she now recognized. Her transformation from the terrified puppy at the auction to this confident social creature was remarkable to watch. Dr. Vextai activated a holographic display showing station records. "Yesterday's rescue operation has been analyzed extensively. Luna's sensory capabilities exceeded our most advanced equipment by factors we had not thought possible. Her performance saved 3 lives and prevented a potential catastrophic station failure. She did what wolves do naturally," Marcus said, scratching Luna behind the ears. "Pack animals take care of their community." "That is precisely the point," Security Chief Mexan interjected, his forearms gesturing emphatically. Luna demonstrated that your interspecies pack bond extends beyond just you two. She risked her life to save aliens she had never met, guided by instincts that your presence somehow activated. The young blobling pulsed a warm golden color as it spoke. "My life exists because of Luna's abilities and your bond with her. My family wishes to express gratitude through tangible assistance." Marcus felt a flutter of hope but tried to keep his expectations realistic. "I appreciate the sentiment, but unless you have 15,000 credits lying around, I'm not sure how anyone can help." Dr. Calethia's shadowy form shimmered with what Marcus had learned indicated amusement. "We do not have 15,000 credits. We have something far more valuable, a solution that benefits everyone involved." She activated another display showing official Galactic Council documents. "The Interspecies Cooperation Institute has been seeking practical applications for cross-species bonding research. Luna's rescue performance yesterday provided exactly the evidence they needed. The Institute is prepared to fund a comprehensive research program," Dr. Vextai continued, "studying human-animal bonds, developing training protocols for other species, and establishing rescue programs throughout the galaxy. The initial funding is 200,000 credits." Marcus stared at the numbers, hardly believing what he was seeing. 200,000? For research? "For research, development, and program implementation," Dr. Calethia clarified. "With you and Luna as primary consultants and demonstration team, your debt would be cleared, your business restored, and you would receive ongoing compensation for participating in the program." Luna seemed to sense the emotional shift in the room. She moved to Marcus's side, pressing against his leg in her familiar gesture of comfort and support. Looking down at her trusting face, Marcus realized that this opportunity meant more than just financial security. "What would Luna and I have to do?" he asked carefully. Security Chief Mexan stepped forward. "Train rescue teams throughout the galactic sectors. Demonstrate bonding techniques to other humans interested in working with animals. Participate in research that could revolutionize how species interact with each other." "Luna would become famous," the rescued blobling added, pulsing with excitement. "The first documented case of successful interspecies pack bonding. Her story could inspire cooperation between species throughout the galaxy." Marcus crouched down to Luna's level, studying her intelligent, pale blue eyes. "What do you think, girl? Ready to become a galactic ambassador?" Luna's response was to lick his hand and wag her tail, a gesture that drew delighted sounds from several of the alien observers. I think that's a yes, Marcus said, standing up with a smile that felt like the first genuine happiness he'd experienced in weeks. The next few hours were a whirlwind of legal documents, financial transfers, and communication with various galactic institutions. Marcus watched in amazement as his debt disappeared, his business ownership was restored, and his account balance showed more credits than he'd ever imagined having. But the most remarkable moment came when Commander Thaxilon arrived with a formal military delegation. Marcus Chen, the commander said stiffly, the Zentari Defense Council acknowledges that our previous assessment of your situation was incomplete. How so? Marcus asked, curious about this unexpected change in attitude. We evaluated Luna as a potential military asset based solely on her individual capabilities, Commander Thaxilon explained. We failed to recognize that her abilities are amplified by her bond with you. The rescue operation demonstrated that the human-wolf partnership exceeds the sum of its parts. Dr. Vexitai nodded enthusiastically. The synergistic effect is unprecedented. Luna's natural abilities combined with Marcus's intuitive understanding of her communication creates a team that performs beyond what either could achieve individually. Therefore, Commander Thaxilon continued, the Zentari Defense Council wishes to formally contract your services for search and rescue training programs. We acknowledge that separating you from Luna would destroy the very capabilities we seek to utilize. Marcus felt a deep satisfaction at hearing alien military officials finally understand what he'd known from the beginning. Luna wasn't just a useful animal. She was his partner. Their bond made both of them more capable, more effective, and more complete. As the various alien delegations departed, leaving Marcus and Luna alone in their workshop for the first time in hours, the scope of what had just happened began to sink in. They weren't just financially secure, they had become pioneers in a new field of interspecies cooperation. Luna settled beside Marcus on the couch, resting her head on his lap with a contented sigh. She was growing rapidly, already showing signs of the powerful, intelligent adult she would become. But despite her size and capabilities, she was still the same trusting creature who had pressed against the back wall of a containment field, terrified and alone. You know what the best part is, Luna? Marcus said softly, stroking her thick white fur. We get to stay together. Through everything that happens next, we're still family. Luna made a small sound of contentment and closed her pale blue eyes, completely relaxed in the knowledge that Marcus would always be there to protect her, just as she would always be there to protect him. Outside their window, the stars streamed past as the station continued its eternal journey through space. But inside the small workshop, a human and a wolf had created something that was changing how an entire galaxy thought about the bonds between species. The aliens were finally beginning to understand what Marcus had known from the moment he'd bankrupted himself for a terrified puppy. Some things were more valuable than money, more important than logic, and more powerful than any individual capability. Family was worth everything. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the ISS Harmony, watching Luna demonstrate tracking techniques to a mixed group of alien rescue specialists. At 8 months old, she had grown into a magnificent wolf, her white coat gleaming under the station's lights and her pale blue eyes holding the wisdom of an experienced working partner. Target acquired, Luna signaled with a specific bark pattern they'd developed together. She was indicating the location of a hidden scent marker in a training scenario designed to simulate emergency rescue conditions. The watching aliens took detailed notes as Marcus explained Luna's communication methods. The audience included Zentari military officers, Valkan researchers, Kellan emergency responders, and even a few bloblings who had developed unexpected interest in animal partnership programs. The key is understanding that Luna isn't just finding the target, Marcus explained. She's constantly communicating with me about what she's sensing, what she's thinking, and what she needs me to know. Our effectiveness comes from this ongoing dialogue. Dr. Calithia, now the lead researcher for the Interspecies Cooperation Institute, materialized near the training area. Demonstration complete. Analysis indicates 97% accuracy rate, 15% faster than previous standard methods. The success of their program had exceeded everyone's expectations. In 6 months, Marcus and Luna had trained teams on 12 different stations, established protocols for human-animal partnerships throughout 3 galactic sectors, and inspired the creation of similar programs with other Earth species. The ripple effects continue to expand, Dr. Vex Tai reported, joining the group with his ever-present datapad. Requests for training programs have increased by 300%. 7 species have initiated preliminary studies of bonding compatibility with various Earth animals. Marcus smiled, watching Luna interact with the alien trainees. She had developed remarkable social skills, able to work comfortably with species that had initially terrified her. Her confidence was infectious, inspiring even the most skeptical aliens to reconsider their assumptions about interspecies relationships. Most significantly, Dr. Calethia continued, the Galactic Council is considering formal recognition of emotional support relationships in interspecies law. Your bond with Luna has become the primary case study for redefining how we understand family units across species boundaries. A young Zentari trainee approached Marcus nervously. Human Marcus, I wish to understand the emotional component you describe. How does one develop such feelings for a different species? Marcus considered the question carefully. Over the months, he'd been asked this same thing hundreds of times by dozens of different species, each struggling to comprehend something that felt as natural as breathing to him. You don't develop the feelings, Marcus said finally. You just stop fighting them. When Luna was scared and alone at that auction, I felt protective of her. When she trusted me despite having every reason to be afraid, I felt responsible for her. When she started showing affection and loyalty, I couldn't help but love her back. The Zentari trainee's mandibles clicked with confusion. But how did you know these feelings were appropriate? What if your emotional response was incorrect? Luna, who had been listening to the conversation, trotted over and sat beside Marcus, leaning against his leg in her familiar gesture of support. The movement was so natural, so obviously affectionate, that several of the watching aliens made sounds of amazement. Look at her, Marcus said, scratching behind Luna's ears. Does this look wrong to you? Does our partnership seem harmful or inappropriate? The Zentari trainee studied Luna's relaxed posture, her contentment, the obvious trust and affection in her interaction with Marcus. No, the alien said slowly. It appears beneficial to both parties. That's how you know, Marcus explained. Not through logic or analysis or social expectations. You know, because both individuals are happier, healthier, and more capable together than apart. As the training session concluded, Marcus and Luna walked through the Harmony's corridors toward their new permanent quarters. The space was larger than Marcus's old workshop, with areas specifically designed for Luna's needs and comfort. It was a far cry from the cramped apartment where they'd first learned to live together. Remember when our biggest worry was making rent? Marcus asked Luna as they settled into their living area. Now we're redefining galactic law and changing how entire species think about relationships. Luna made a soft sound and curled up on her favorite sleeping pad, a specially designed piece that regulated temperature and provided optimal comfort for her growing frame. But even with luxury accommodations, she still preferred to stay close to Marcus whenever possible. A communication alert chimed, and Marcus activated the holographic display to see Captain Sarah Chen, his sister, calling from Earth. Marcus, Sarah's excited voice filled the room. I just saw the latest news reports about your program. The president is talking about establishing formal diplomatic partnerships based on your model, and there's a waiting list of people who want to adopt rescue animals to work with. It's been incredible, Marcus replied, feeling Luna's warmth against his leg as she listened to his sister's voice. Every week brings new developments. Yesterday, a Kellen colony requested help setting up their first canine rescue program. I'm so proud of you, Sarah said softly. When you called to tell me you'd bankrupted yourself for a wolf puppy, I thought you'd lost your mind. Now I realize you found something more valuable than sanity. Marcus looked down at Luna, who was watching the holographic display with intelligent interest. She'd learned to recognize Sarah's voice and image, understanding that this person was important to Marcus even though they'd never met in person. I found family, Marcus said simply. Everything else just followed from that. After the call ended, Marcus sat in the comfortable silence of their quarters, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. Sometimes it felt impossible that only 6 months ago, He'd been a struggling mechanic facing financial ruin. The transformation had been so complete that his old life seemed like something that had happened to someone else. But Luna was the constant thread connecting his past to his present. She was still the same creature who had trusted him completely from their first moment together, who had chosen to see him as Pac despite every logical reason to remain afraid. "You know what I realized today?" Marcus said, speaking to Luna as he often did when they were alone. "You didn't just change my life. You changed how an entire galaxy thinks about connection and family. Not bad for a puppy who was scared of her own shadow." Luna lifted her head and looked at him with those pale blue eyes that held such depth and intelligence. Then she did what she'd done that first day in the auction bay, and every day since she moved closer to Marcus, offering comfort and companionship without expecting anything in return except the same unconditional acceptance. Outside their window, the stars continued their eternal dance through space. Ships from dozens of worlds carried news of the Human-Wolf Partnership program to distant colonies. Scientists worked to understand the mechanisms behind interspecies bonding. Military units trained with animal partners for the first time in galactic history. But in their quiet quarters on the ISS Harmony, the revolution they'd started was simply two beings who had chosen to be family, finding in each other something that made the universe a warmer, more connected place. Marcus fell asleep that night as he had every night for the past 6 months, with Luna's steady breathing beside him, her presence a reminder that the most important things in life couldn't be bought, sold, or logicked into existence. They could only be chosen, protected, and cherished. Some bonds transcended species, defied explanation, and changed everything they touched. Marcus and Luna had proven that love, in all its forms, truly was a universal language.